The city hummed outside his window, honking horns, restless engines, the faint cry of hawkers selling plantain chips beneath the Lekki Bridge. But inside the penthouse, silence reigned. Damilare Okonkwo sat behind a desk large enough to hold half a conference room, scrolling through contracts he no longer cared to read. Money came easily now, what refused to come was peace. He was the kind of man who had everything Lagos could offer. Real estate towers with his name on them, cars that purred like contented lions, and women whose smiles flickered out as soon as he turned away. Every headline called him the loner prince, the billionaire who lived alone in a house of glass. He told himself he preferred it that way. But some nights, when rain whispered against the windows, he would stand at the edge of the city lights and wonder if perhaps all that glass only kept him from touching something real. When his housekeeper fell ill, the agency sent a replacement, a slim, quiet girl named Adaora. She arrived early one Tuesday, clutching a small nylon bag, her eyes wide at the marble floors that reflected her worn sandals. She was 22, from Surulere, and had worked in more homes than she could count. She didn't expect this one to be any different. But the first time Damilare saw her, kneeling by the fountain in the courtyard, rinsing a rag beneath the morning sun, something tilted inside him. It wasn't beauty, though she was beautiful in an unstudied way. It was the calm. In a house that had felt like a museum, her presence moved like fresh air. He watched from the balcony for a while before realizing how strange it must look. "You can leave that, the gardener handles it," he said, voice sharper than he meant. Adaora, startled, bowed slightly. "Yes, sir." And yet she kept cleaning, slow and careful, as though the act itself steadied her heart. Days folded into weeks. Damilare told himself he was only being observant when his eyes followed her movements. He admired how she folded sheets with military precision, how she hummed softly while dusting the grand piano no one played. Sometimes, when she thought no one listened, she would sing, a small, clear voice that filled the marble halls with something like warmth. It unnerved him. One evening, power flickered out across the estate. Candles threw restless shadows on the walls. Adaora came with a lamp to his study. "Let me light this for you, sir," she said. Her fingers brushed his as the wick caught. A shock of warmth ran through him. For a moment their eyes met, the billionaire and the maid, and silence became a language neither of them knew how to end. He cleared his throat. "You can go." But she lingered, smiling faintly. "It's raining outside, sir. The sound helps me work faster." He didn't understand why his heart beat louder than the rain. The next afternoon, Lagos wept again. Thunder rolled over the lagoon as sheets of rain blurred the gardens. Adaora ran to bring in the laundry, her scarf plastered to her hair, laughter spilling as she struggled with the wind. From the window, Damilare watched, something in his chest unraveling. Without thinking, he stepped outside, letting the rain soak through his shirt. She froze when she saw him. "Sir, you'll get cold?" "Let it," he said. "I've been cold for years." They stood there, rain running down their faces like tears neither wanted to admit. He reached out, pushed a stray curl from her cheek, and the world shrank to the space between them. The storm, the heartbeat, the silence that trembled into closeness. It wasn't a kiss of hunger, it was discovery. A moment that said, "I see you. I've waited for you without knowing." When they stepped apart, the rain still fell, but the house behind them felt a little less lonely. That's the first half of the story. The days after the rain carried a kind of quiet that was different from the silence Damilare had always known. It wasn't the emptiness of loneliness anymore, it was the charged quiet of a heart that has begun to listen. He tried to drown it in meetings, in phone calls that stretched into midnight, in the clink of glass against glass at parties full of people who laughed too loud. But each time, his mind found its way back to the soft sound of Adaora's laughter beneath the storm. When he returned home one night, he found her asleep on the kitchen table, head resting on folded arms beside a stack of neatly ironed napkins. A small radio hummed near her elbow. The song was low and tender, a love ballad from decades ago. He stood there for a long moment, unsure what surprised him more, the sight of her sleeping or the peace it brought. He wanted to reach out, to brush the tiredness from her eyes. Instead, he turned off the radio, draped his suit jacket over her shoulders and left quietly. From that night on, the house felt different. The scent of freshly baked bread in the mornings, the small vase of hibiscus she left on his desk, the way she greeted every guard by name, everything she touched softened the edges of his world. He didn't know how to thank her, so he started to learn. He greeted first, smiled more, and began to remember the sound of his own laughter. Rumors grew the way they always did in Lagos, quietly at first, then everywhere at once. Someone saw the boss watching the maid for too long. Someone else swore they rode together to the market when the driver was sick. Damelaire's board members joked about it, but his aunt, who had managed his home since he was a boy, did not find it funny. "She's beneath you," she warned. "Do not let a servant stain your name." The words burned more than he expected. That night he avoided Aurora, staying in his office until dawn. She noticed, of course. Her eyes, usually bright with quiet courage, turned cautious. When she finally found him in the garden 2 days later, he looked away. "Did I do something wrong, sir?" she asked, voice small. He wanted to tell her everything. How he feared losing control, how her presence had become his heartbeat, how he hated himself for caring about what society thought. But all he managed was, "No. You did nothing wrong." She nodded, but her smile faltered. The following morning she didn't sing while cleaning. The air felt heavier for it. A week passed before he broke. He found her in the courtyard watering the hibiscus she'd planted. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what, sir?" "For pretending I didn't miss you every hour I tried to forget you." She stared, stunned, as he took her hands. The city noise faded. Only their breathing filled the space. "You can't say this to me," she whispered. "People will talk." "Let them," he said softly. "I've lived my life behind walls. You're the first person who makes me want to open the door." And for the first time she didn't look away. The wind carried the scent of rain again, as if blessing them. Love, once spoken, changes everything. He promoted her quietly, giving her charge over the household accounts so she could work beside him rather than beneath him. It wasn't about status. It was his way of saying, "I see your worth." Yet the whispers persisted. Invitations to business dinners came with careful, condescending smiles. Friends asked if he'd come to his senses yet. But Damelaire was done hiding. He brought Aurora to a company charity gala, her in a simple emerald gown, hair tied back, face glowing with nervous dignity. When photographers turned their cameras, he reached for her hand. The flashbulbs caught that moment, the billionaire and the maid standing together without apology. The next day's headlines were merciless, but the public saw what the tabloids missed: the way he looked at her as if she were light itself. Messages poured in from people who'd never believed in love stories anymore. Within months he founded a new initiative under her name, the Aurora Foundation, supporting working women across Lagos. At the opening ceremony, he handed her the microphone. "I used to think loneliness was strength," he said to the crowd. "But real strength is letting someone see you, truly see you, and still stay." Aurora turned to him, eyes shining. "And real love," she replied, "is giving someone a reason to stay." He kissed her then, gentle, sure, before everyone. It wasn't scandal, it was grace. The city that had once whispered now cheered. Years later, the mansion no longer felt like glass and silence. There were flowers in every room, laughter echoing through the halls, and the smell of fresh akara on weekend mornings. When the rain fell against the windows, Damelaire would find Aurora by the same courtyard where it had all begun. He would slip his arm around her waist, and they would stand together, listening to the sound that once marked their first kiss. He was still the billionaire of Lagos, still respected, still powerful. But when people asked what changed him, he would simply smile and say, "She taught me how to live again." And so, in a city that rarely slowed down, the loner's heart finally found its home. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this story. Please like and subscribe for more stories.